Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to set up the screen time parent controls that have just been released in iOS 12 and that will hopefully allow you to exercise some control over your child's use of their devices and the amount of time they spend attached to it. So before we get started, there are two prerequisites to this. The first one is that both devices must have iOS 12 installed on them. That's your device and your child's device. Unfortunately, if you can't get iOS 12 for either your device or your child's device, you effectively can't use this without upgrading the iPad to a device that can have iOS 12. The second prerequisite is that your child must be set up as a managed account family member using family sharing. So if I go into the settings here, you can see I've got my child set up. I'm the organizer. My child is underneath my account as a family member. So once we've got family sharing set up, and as well make sure you've got Ask to Buy switched on for that account, you should see under here the shared features, and one of those is screen time. So if I go into my family member, and obviously if you've got more than one family member under your account, you'd see more names in here, and I click on there, and this is where I've got the options. Now it's important to bear in mind first of all that this is only the first iteration of screen time management in iOS 12, so it's not as full featured as perhaps I was hoping, but nevertheless it is still quite useful. So the first one you've got down here is downtime, and I've already set up a code on this. If you're doing it for the first time, it will ask you to put in a code, and that's obviously a code that you don't want to share with your child. And you can turn on or off downtime. Now I can set basically a time, so let's say from 5 o'clock in the evening up until 8 o'clock in the morning. I do not want my child to be able to use their iPad. So if I switch on, the device will be blocked at downtime. You can see that my child will be able to ask for more time from a parent or guardian, but obviously I don't have to grant that. So you can see that that is now set up. Now what I was hoping would be that you'd be able to set more than one period of downtime, but clearly you can't do that, so hopefully that's something that will come in a later iteration of these screen time tools. So the next one we're going to look at is app limits, and if I go into that one, I'm going to add a limit. Now you can obviously do them all at once if you want through all apps and categories, or you can break them down. Now it hasn't got specific app control at this point, it's only got categories of apps. So I'm going to start with social networking, and I'm going to add that one in there, and let's say that I want to give them 30 minutes of social media time a day. At the moment you can't specify when they can use social media. What I can do, however, is go into customize days, and you can see it's set it to every day. Again, bit of a bizarre thing, but if I want to give them no time on Monday, it won't let me. So the least amount of time I can give them on social media is 1 minute, and again, if I want to do that for other days, I can, apart from Saturdays and Sundays when you get 30 minutes. So I'm going to go back to there, and then I'm going to go out of app limits. Okay, and you can see I've set custom social networking limits. Now the other thing I can do is go to add limits here. I might choose games this time, and I'm going to say again you can have 1 hour of gaming, and again I can customize the days, and on Monday you get, well, this is the closest I can get to 0, so you get 1 minute of gaming on Mondays, 1 minute of gaming on Tuesday, 1 minute gaming on Wednesday, 1 minute gaming on Thursday, and I'm going to be generous and give my child 15 minutes of gaming on Friday. So let's come out of there. And again, we'll go back to app limits. So now you can see I've put limits on social networking and games. If I don't want them watching too much Netflix, I might go to entertainment. And again, I might give them, let's say, 30 minutes of entertainment per day. And again, I can customize the days if I want to. Now, hopefully, I don't know what the thinking potentially is behind the ability to be able to, or the lack of ability to be able to say, okay, I'm going to only allow you on social media between 9 and 10. Perhaps maybe the thinking behind it was that by saying 30 minutes of social networking at any time throughout the day, children will be a little bit more selective about what an appropriate time to use their access to these particular categories is. I don't know, but personally I'd probably want a bit more granular control over those app limits. So obviously we've got a number of other categories here: health and fitness, education, productivity, creativity. Now just bear in mind that the apps, if they're not in the right categories in the App Store, you may find that certain things get through here, but without really trying it, it's difficult to say. So the next thing to look at is apps that are always allowed, and if I go into that section there, okay, you can see that I've got all of the apps listed here. Now you will find that FaceTime, iMessage, if you can find it, messages, and Maps is already set as default, always allow. Now if you don't want to use messages, iMessage or FaceTime or Maps, then you can obviously click the remove button and you can put that there. Now this is currently showing all of the apps that are installed on my child's device. If your child isn't using iOS 11, then nothing shows up in this list. So that's why it's important, obviously, for both devices to be on iOS 12. And it's just a case of going through and saying, okay, what do I want them to be able to access all the time? Well, maybe I want them to be able to access the camera all the time. Don't have an issue with them doing work all the time, so I'm going to give them access to Book Creator, and so on and so forth. And basically, once you've built up that list, and if I go back here, even when I switch on that downtime like this, those apps will continue to be available. Now, the other thing which is worth looking at is content and privacy restrictions, and this is basically very similar to the restrictions that have been built into iOS 11 and earlier for quite some time. The difference is you're now able to manage them remotely. So if I go into iTunes and App Store, just like we did before, I don't allow installing apps, deleting apps, or in-app purchases. And basically, if you've set it up like that to don't allow, the App Store disappears from your child's device home screen. So I'm going to go back again here. Again, these are fairly standard, same as they were before. I can switch on allowed apps. So for example, I might switch off CarPlay. I might switch off the iTunes store. It's a bit annoying that it keeps going back to this, but anyway, that's what happens. Siri, for example. And don't forget with these ones, if you're switching them off, you are switching them off permanently. This is outside of your downtime time limits that you might have set. So all the other restrictions, again, share my location, content restrictions, so on and so forth. I think I've got another video out about how to manage all of these, so I'm not going to go through all of those, and again, they are fairly obvious what they do. So if I come back out of here, I'm including website data in that because Safari for some reason is not included as an app that gets blocked. It's always on, but if I switch that on, they can open Safari but they can't go to the internet, and I will show you what that looks like on a child's iPad in a second. So that's basically an overview of all of the parent controls that you now have on your device to manage your child's device. I'm just going to flick over now to a different iPad and we'll have a look and see what that looks like in practice. Okay, so I'm now on my child's device and I'm going to control it using my own device. So as you can see at the moment, I've got no restrictions in place on this device, and if I go into downtime on my device and turn it on, now I've set my start time for 8 o'clock and my end time for 10 o'clock at night on this one, so that's basically blocking it throughout the day just for demonstration purposes. So I've turned downtime on. I'm going to exit back out of the screen time control, and you'll see straight away that all of the apps have disappeared, apart from the ones which I set earlier in the video. So Book Creator, Camera are still available for use because they are on my allowed apps list. Now you'll also notice down the bottom here that Safari is not blocked still, and if I go into that and try and go to something, so Google for example, and this isn't perfect for some reason, eventually we got there in the end, it says that you've reached your time limit here. So again, if I go to a different website, let's just try something else. For some reason it does seem to load it in the background, but it slaps the time limit logo over the top of it, and again I can't really do anything else at this point. So again, if I switch off downtime like this, takes a couple of seconds, but you can see that all of my apps have now appeared again. And also, as I said before, if I go to the content and privacy restrictions, so I'm going to turn back on the App Store, so I'm going to allow my child to install apps, and hopefully, yep, there you go, you can see the App Store has just reappeared back on the device. So I can effectively sort of turn on and off features remotely as they're required. So I'm just going to hop back over to my iPad now. And the reason for that is because I just want to show you very quickly the breakdown. I'm in my screen time section for a particular child, and if I go into it, I get a bit of a breakdown of what it is that they've actually been doing. So obviously there's not going to be a lot to see here, but you can see I've spent a bit of time in the App Store, a bit of times on Google Maps, and what more specifically what websites I've been looking at as well. So one thing I've also noticed as a result of doing this is that on my child's iPad, incognito mode effectively disappears. So I can see in my overview screen what websites that they've been looking at as well, which is obviously really handy. So I hope that's useful. Do let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.